make sure that we're doing this the right way is basically making sure that we have a resource that's available to all teachers and staff members so that they can go here and get any kind of resources that they need associated with the collaborative work grant and the data teaming process. So I'm just going to kind of show you what this document's all about. So in the beginning, like I said, over here is just basically a schedule outlined for the teachers and staff so we know what to expect for when the tests are being given and when they need to have the data entered by and when students will be looking at the results as well. Next, I just went through and organized all of the groups for our data teaming. So if you look, you can look horizontally, and 7C is one of our data teams. These are the members of the team. This is the meeting location. This is the meeting time and day. As we're going down, I also kind of helped organize and help our teachers get started with the data teaming process by coming up with some possible topics of discussion when they were beginning the whole process of data teaming. Sometimes we can get, I don't know, people are a little unsure of what to talk about, and so I just figured giving them a guideline or just a starting point would help initiate those conversations. And I've actually seen that the data teaming conversations have grown so much over the school year, and that we really, really are having just rich conversations regarding student growth and what factors contribute to that growth and what we can do to help our students succeed.
What can we do to get more in-depth elaboration? I mean, could we change, like, not changing the race strategy, but maybe make it RACCEE, okay? Like for these kids only. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I noticed that you explained, but think of it almost like you need to double explain. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Would that be something that we could talk to these kids just like one-on-one basis? Not like the whole class, we're changing the whole strategy.
Right.
Yeah. But you know,
there's some kids you could push.
Yeah, because there are some kids that you just say RACE, race strategy, they know they have to cite 2 pieces. There are other kids where we had to go up to them and tell them, we're doing CCE, so that they could check off, okay, 2. Mm-hmm. So are those same kids are probably the kids that are going through and not elaborating enough. Right. So do you think that could be something we could do? Like just
I did meeting dates, and like I said, possible topics of discussion. And as the year's gone on, I've noticed that our teams use these possible topics, but they don't rely on them any longer. The teams now are completely self-sufficient and can run on their own without really needing to even look back at what they should be discussing because they're comfortable now with the process.
The percentage of students, the number of students who are at what levels, and then we'll talk about their goals and instructional strategies. And then after that, we'll talk about kind of what we've been seeing. If the main thing that I wanted to talk about today was like, are students continually struggling in one specific area, and then why do we think that that's happening? And then another big one is strategies that have worked thus far, because we're obviously coming to the end, and so just some things that we think have worked with our kiddos that maybe we can keep.
Going off that, I also created a kind of a date sheet, time sheet for when students need to be tracking their data. So if you look on the left-hand column here, you'll see that these are the days that students will be receive feedback on their common formative assessments. Now, they'll receive feedback regularly using the strategy associated with completing constructed response questions and citing text evidence. However, when it comes to their common formative assessment, the assessment that all 7th graders and all 8th graders take, they will be receiving them back on these dates. And it's the responsibility of the TC teacher to go over these things with the student. Now that we're at the end of the year, it looks much different during our TC time. For example, students now compare, or they go through and do self-grading. So they go and they score their own benchmark, and then I share with them the results that they earned from me. The students will track the results, and they even kind of look and compare how I score them versus how they scored themselves.
So I'd like you to just skim over while we're waiting for the internet to come up. And then we'll go through, and we are going to do some self-grading today. Then you guys are going to reflect based on how I graded you and see if we agreed with one another, if we disagreed. And then after that, we'll go through and do the reflection and the data tracking in your actual folder. Okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and give you a minute while I'm still waiting for that. I apologize, it's taking so long to come up. I'm just going to go ahead and give you a minute to read over, skim your text, and then look at your answers. If you notice, I didn't write hardly anything on your answers this time. Usually I write more comments on there. That's because I didn't want you to be swayed or grade yourself a certain way based on what I wrote.
Okay, what I've noticed that usually the students and I are very, very consistent in how we scored their work. I have actually yet to see a student score themselves higher than what I've scored them. In fact, most of the time, they're harder on themselves. But to make sure that we are scoring consistently, our school has developed different scoring rubrics. There's basically just a half sheet of our scoring rubric right here. So we have a more detailed rubric, and this is kind of the little quick version of that rubric. So when I talked about students scoring themselves, they score their answers based on how they implemented the RACE strategy. So the RACE strategy is a strategy we use for answering constructed response questions. So the R stands for restate. Student will look at their answer and determine where their answer or where their restate part of their answer kind of fits in. Same thing with the A, the C, and the E. So with that being said, I've created this data teaming resource. It's a step-by-step guide over the process of what teachers will be doing and as we're going through and looking at our goals. So the first step is that they administer the RACE assessment. Okay, so this is the common formative assessment. As I said, 7th grade has one and 8th grade has one, and each TC teacher administers this assessment. On their own, teachers will grade the assessments. So what I did for each assessment after students took a common formative assessment, I created a sample answer and shared this in our shared folder so that teachers could access this. Now this doesn't mean that every single answer would be written the exact same way that I wrote my sample answer. However, it was a great starting point for those teachers who were nervous about how to grade writing. And so as you can see, I have it outlined in the same way that we saw on the rubric: restate, answer, cite, and explain. I've also used color coding so that it was very clear which part of the answer was using which part of the strategy.
We'll just go right into 2.5s because I think this is where we're going to spend a lot of time talking about elaboration.
I would say, yeah.
So we have 33 2.5s. 11 of those were mine.
Good.
And for those 11, it was all because of the E, the elaboration piece. I think we need to get them moving beyond just explaining their answer and what elaboration really means. You know, that it means to make connections from what you read in the text to what you know about the real world.
Thought.
Yeah, show some original thought. So what my kids did do pretty well was write that last sentence as a concluding sentence. You know, this answer made sense because, or I think this because, but it doesn't go beyond to show really how they're applying that thinking to
Thinking about, well, what is it that makes it so that they can take it? And so you try to give them enough examples, but that's a higher level thinking skill. So the idea is to continuously kind of play games with them
Like
like
that.
that.
Where you
So for like
cover
10 to
up-
15 minutes?
You
or-
always give them examples of what will work,
Exactly.
and they come up with things, and you're like, oh, I have enough of those.
Well, there's a lot of deduction there and a lot of
Right.
convergence on what is the reason why.
Requiring them to
That's the
sort.
skill. That's the skill that you're trying to build.
They have to sort information.
Yes. And that's what we're trying to get them to do when we're trying to get them to elaborate and put this into their own words. We're wanting them to deepen their thinking and figure out, okay, well, I cited this, and so now I've got to explain this in my own words and elaborate. But unless they actually have that skill set, they're not going to do that.
But in order for the data team to function properly during this meeting, we need to make sure that we are really planning our time accordingly. So if we look here, we can see that on this agenda, all right, they're only going to spend 1 minute on level 4 discussing strengths and obstacles. Okay, they're going to spend 1 minute on level 4 with setting new goals. And you can see based on how many minutes, the minutes assigned to each group, how many they had in that level. So obviously when we're looking at this one, it looks like we had 7 minutes dedicated to analyzing level 1 students. So since each meeting is only about 45 minutes, we know that 7 minutes is probably a pretty substantial time to look at the level 1s. Okay, the next thing that teachers need to do to make sure that they're ready for their data teaming meeting is to fill out just kind of a rough draft of the benchmark data analysis team chart. So when we're looking at this chart, you can see again we have our students separated by level. So we have 4 as advanced, 3.5, 3 proficient, 2.5, 2 is basic, 1.5, and then we have a separate sheet for our level 1 students, which each group of students will go through and write down the total number, the percent, student names, possible reasons for students not meeting their goals by the next meeting, and instructional strategies. When we go down to our level 1 students, it's going to be the same thing, but we're going to look at them specifically and give each student a different box. Because when we go to talk in our data teaming meeting, I'm going to speak in generalizations about my level 3s, whereas with my level 1s, I'm going to speak very specifically about each student.
Looking at the names and numbers, most of them are
They are.
IEP kids.
And, yeah.
Well, and
Or
And a mix of EL.
our homework.
Right.
Yeah. IEP. Like double diagnosis.
right?
Significant on, I had 1.5, and she's close. I mean, she may hit 2 on the last benchmark. But this young lady is language impaired. She is not severe.
So if we just take a look, these are some sample notes. Okay, so you can see here we had 4 students that were at level 4, 16 that were at a 3.5. We talked about some slight errors that they might have and some instructional strategies that we are going to use to help them to get to the level 4. We did the same thing for each level. And then we also have down here, as you can see, some students that were scored level 1. We talked about some reasons for them not meeting their goals, and then also individualized instructional strategies and goals by next meeting. What's really great is that we're seeing that not only are teachers using resources that I'm creating or that the literacy team's creating to better equip themselves, I guess, with scoring and teaching this process, but they're also creating their own. It was really neat when I got an email from a teacher and they said, hey, I have a great way to think about the race strategy. I'm going to use this with my students. So this was something that a foreign language teacher actually came up with and shared with us. And she had her own unique way of looking at the race strategy for answering constructed responses and helping kids understand it by looking at it as wrapping up a present. Or another teacher took my cheat sheets that we saw earlier and he made it into a really cool poster. So if we look right here, explain text evidence, and he made it into a great poster that has all of those different words that we had, all of those different ways to explain evidence, made it into a poster. So now that it's hanging in his room, it's been really amazing to see how we've gone through this journey with the collaborative work grant, and to see all of the improvements that we made thus far. And I'm extremely excited to see how we're going to continue to work together to find solutions and strategies that we can use to help our students be even more successful and to help ourselves grow as educators.
Instructional strategies we were working on last time to go through last couple of times. To go through and have them do that concluding sentence that we also know is like the summary sentence.
It's what she